I was going to do an hour-long workout, but I just couldn't get to it. So I skipped the whole thing and I didn't do anything because anything less than perfection just doesn't count. If you have ever thought this to yourself, you are not alone, my friend. I promise. And on today's podcast episode, we're going to be taking a look at all or nothing thinking, particularly when it comes to your fitness goals. Why do you do it? Why is it getting in the way of the progress that you want to see? And what things might you do instead? Thank you so much for being with me on the podcast today. I'm really excited to dive into this second in a short series about mindset when it comes to fitness over 40. And in the last episode, we took a look at fixed mindset versus growth mindset and how to use a growth mindset to really reach for your fitness goals. Today, we're looking at another very common mindset, which is all or nothing thinking and how it can come up when it comes to fitness and nutrition and why we do it. And then, of course, what are some tips that you can use to start shifting this type of thinking? So that's what we're going to look at on today's episode. And if you're ready to move forward with your goals of building strength, adding muscle, having more energy, and improving your performance both in and out of the gym, you're an athletic woman over the age of 40, and you want to start working with your physiology instead of banging up against it, then go ahead and check out Strength Nutrition Unlocked. This is my group coaching program where we combine science-based, evidence-backed principles in terms of training, nutrition, and recovery. We give you community support and expert guidance. Go ahead and check it out and apply at stephgaudreau.com/apply. All right, let's go ahead and take a look here at all or nothing mindset. Now, again, as I said in the last episode, this is very, very common. So it's nothing to feel bad over. It's nothing to feel guilty for. It's just worth noticing and building awareness of. So if you want to start trying some new behaviors, you were working with a coach, even maybe you decide to come work with us in Strength Nutrition Unlocked or with me one-on-one, we are inevitably going to talk about mindset at some point because it is so closely linked to following through with behavior change. So it's nothing to be ashamed about, but it's just something to be aware of. And also, I'm not a mental health professional. I am a sports nutritionist and strength coach, and I happen to work with women over 40. So that is the lens through which I'm presenting this is what might we do in coaching in order to shift the present and create different future outcomes. Let's start with the question, what is an all or nothing mindset? In the psychological research, this is oftentimes called dichotomous thinking or binary thinking, and both of those things imply two. So what does that mean? It's a way of thinking where everything fits into rigid categories. It's either one way or the other way. It's either this way or that way. It's either black or white. It's either healthy or unhealthy. It's either good or bad. And there is no nuance, no context, no gray area to be found. There's no flexibility in thinking. So the question then becomes, why do we do this? If it's so common, but yet in terms of long-term goals, it is not very helpful, or it can get in the way and create more obstacles to us reaching our long-term goals. So why do we do this to ourselves? Ultimately, this kind of all or nothing thinking appeals to your brain. It is very attractive, at least on the surface, because it makes things seem very simple, very clear cut, and very easy to put into boxes. We're always trying to make sense of the world. We're always seeking safety. We're driving away from pain and toward pleasure. So if we can make sense of the world around us and all the information coming at us, at least on the surface, it seems like things will be easier. It'll be easier to make decisions. However, over time, this can lead to more rigidity in our ways of thinking instead of a more flexible way of thinking. And if you think about fad diets, and why they are so popular and they continue to gain in popularity, even though we know they do not work. Why do we do this? Why do we engage in fad dieting? Or why do we engage in like crash exercise programs or things that promise quick fixes? Again, many of these programs really use the concept of all or nothing thinking to create strict and rigid categories that make the diet or the exercise plan seem really simple, at least at first, or in the short term. So eat this food, but not that. This is unhealthy. This is healthy. This is good to eat, this is bad to eat. This is the right way to exercise. This is the wrong way to exercise. And so you can see how in the short term, this could help you just move forward, reduce your decision fatigue, and take action. However, in terms of building long-term habits and routines and behavior change, oftentimes this can get us into some hot water, so to say. So let's think about the next question, which is, what are some examples of all or nothing mindset when it comes to fitness? So if you've ever said any of these, chances are you're engaging in some all or nothing thinking. And as I said in the last episode, it is quite common for people to have, for example, fixed mindset in one area, but growth mindset in another. Or you've had all or nothing thinking in one aspect of life, but you display flexible thinking in other areas. So very infrequently is somebody all one way or all the other. Isn't that an interesting binary right there in and of itself? So here are some common examples of an all or nothing mindset when it comes to fitness. This workout was not long enough to count for anything, right? As if like there's some magical time domain where movement actually starts to count. I didn't hit a PR. I am such a failure. Like the whole workout plan, the last 12 weeks was absolute trash. It didn't work. I hear that one a lot. The work meeting that I had spilled over into training time. And so the whole session got ruined. So I'm not going to bother. There's no point in doing this thing if I can't do it perfectly. I had to skip a training session this week, maybe two, and I messed it all up. So now I have to go all the way back to the beginning and start over. So again, if you've ever said any of those, super common, but those are just some that oftentimes come up in fitness. Now, when it comes to nutrition, I'm sure that you can think of some as well. So I ate sugar on this no sugar diet. I have to go all the way back to day one and restart the program. There are some very popular programs out there of which I will not name names. I'm looking at the camera, and they have this rule. If you mess up, you go back to the first day. Very interesting. I ate a cookie and ruined everything, right? This meal wasn't healthy. Oh, well, might as well keep the trend going and start over again on Monday. I'm sure we have all been there. I have personally done this, right? Another one, carbs are horrible. Carbs are going to make me gain weight. They're so bad. They're so unhealthy. Then you can put whatever other food group or whatever it is you want in that slot, right? It's not just carbs. That one's often quite vilified. I didn't hit my protein goal yesterday, so whatever, I'll just like refocus on it next month. And then another one is I ate too much at lunch, so I'll just skip dinner to make up for it. Very all or nothing, right? Very black or white, very this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, this is healthy, this is unhealthy. So now that we've taken a look at what is all or nothing thinking, what are some ways it shows up in fitness? The last question we're going to tackle today is what do I do about this? What do I do instead? So let's take it back just a step and remember that when it comes to improving your fitness, whether it's adding strength, building muscle, improving your cardiovascular function, you're just working on consistency with getting in the gym at this point, mindset is a crucial component of this. And this is based on actual psychological research. It is not just a pop culture idea, but that mindset is so key when it comes to long-term behavior change and how we get there in the short term as well. So particularly for my community, and that tends to be women in your 40s or beyond, whether you're just kind of eking into the beginning of perimenopause, it hasn't started yet, but you're kind of getting prepared, or you're in post-menopause at this point, you're probably starting to experience to some degree that things may be a little bit less predictable for you in terms of, for example, how you feel when you show up for a training session, your energy levels, how your body feels on a particular day. So maybe your joints are a little bit more sore, you're just a little bit more fatigued because you're not sleeping quite as well. And that flexibility, not of, well, certainly of tissues of your body, flexibility, but flexibility in thinking. Your mental skills are incredibly important in this time. And I would venture to say maybe more important at this time of life than at any other time in your life. because you're going to be comparing to what you used to be able to do and be faced with accepting the reality of what your life is like now, what your training is like now, what your body is like now, and planning for things as you go forward, knowing that things are less predictable. So flexibility is an incredibly important skill to practice. I am not saying that this is easy. Quite the contrary. This can be extremely challenging, but it's also a really exciting and interesting opportunity to learn new mental skills and to practice those new mental skills. Remember, we talked last week about a growth mindset and how important that is, and believing that you can change. That takes effort. It doesn't just mean that you were born with this ability, right? You can always improve. You can always learn something and practice, and that effort is so important. So I want to share some tips with you today to take away. Number one, get more aware of the words that you use that may indicate you are displaying all or nothing thinking. Maybe you're constantly saying that this is healthy and this is unhealthy, or you say it's pointless to do 10 minutes of exercise when you really wanted to do an hour, or you see things as very either or. So just get really aware of the words that you're using, and you can even just stop and name what you just said. You repeat it back to yourself in a sense. So you become more aware of the words that you tell yourself. Number two is to shift the binary by brainstorming a third option. So if this food is healthy, this food is unhealthy, what's an example of something in the middle? I do this all the time with my clients. I challenge them to come up with something that is in the middle, is in the gray area, is requiring nuance, has context. And that right there makes it really hard to put whatever it is we're talking about into that binary, that either or, that all or nothing, that good or bad. The third tip is to create goals that focus on progress or process, not just the ultimate outcome that you want to achieve. So let's say you have a goal, you want to do a 300-pound deadlift. Every time you go into the gym and you do not deadlift 300 pounds, you may wind up feeling like you are a failure. Or let's say that your numbers are increasing and then you hit a little bit of a plateau. You might think, oh, I'm failing at this, right? No, I'm not making any progress. So it can be helpful to, yes, envision what the ultimate outcome goal is that you want, but then to also break that up or to focus on what is the process that you are going to engage in. What are those behaviors that are going to help you achieve your end goal? Because it's oftentimes really difficult to control the exact timeline that it takes to achieve the outcome. We can have maybe a guesstimate, but we may not know exactly for sure. However, what we can more directly impact and control is what happens in the middle, right? And then the last one that I have for you is to use the mindset tip of all or something thinking. And I love this. I first heard of this through Jen Comas of Girls Gone Strong. So all or something thinking instead of all or nothing thinking. So if I can't do the whole thing, and I think my other choice is to do nothing, well, what is something that I could do? And this is kind of related to that idea of inserting a third option into the binary. So if all of it is to do an hour, nothing is to sit on the couch, what is something that I could do? Oh, a 10-minute walk around the block. Or maybe I do some body weight exercises in my living room or something of that nature, right? So those are the tips that I have for you. Again, they may sound simple. They are not always easy. They may take time in practice, but with continual awareness and practice over time, you can really start to shift this way of thinking. All right, let's recap this episode. So on this episode, we looked a little bit more at what is all or nothing thinking. Why is it so important that we break out of all or nothing thinking, especially when it comes to our long-term goals in fitness? What are some examples of how all or nothing shows up in fitness? And then finally, 4 tips for practicing other alternatives and more flexible thinking instead of all or nothing thinking. I hope you found this really helpful. I would love to know over on YouTube, leave me a comment. What's one example of all or nothing thinking you've heard of in the fitness or nutrition space? So leave me a comment or send me a DM on Instagram. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast as well. And while you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for more notifications. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode. Stay tuned for the 3rd in the series. This is really going to be interesting because this one isn't one that gets talked about quite as much in terms of fitness, but it can be so powerful in helping you stay motivated for long-term goals. All right. I will see you then. And until then, stay strong.